When you hear 50-50 custody, it sounds pretty simple, right? Half the time with each parent, but in reality, it's not always that cut and dry. While Kentucky made headlines for its approach to equal parenting time, there's a lot more to the story. Today, we're clearing up all the confusion and talking about what families really need to know when it comes to custody from an expert at Velez Law. And we have Tanisa Velez with Velez Law, goodness, owner of the company. She is here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
So Kentucky really made national headlines with this new law that they put in place. So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, in 2018, Kentucky moved to an equal presumption standard. So what that means is if you're going through a custody battle, the presumption where you start is joint legal custody and equal parenting time. So, if there's 30 days in a month, 15 with mom, 15 with dad, however that, comes out to be. And that's what people should expect going into a custody battle, that there's going to be that presumption. That's where the court's going to begin.
And so if someone's going through a divorce in Kentucky right now, does that 50-50 again just happen just automatically?
It can be challenged, the presumption, but there has to be a good reason. If there's substance abuse or if there's domestic violence or things that really are detrimental to the best interest of the child. But if none of that is, is presumed, or I guess that's the wrong word, is there in your case, then you should expect equal parenting time and joint legal custody pursuant to the presumption.
So does this law essentially make things easier in the court then?
I guess it depends on, which side you're on.
Right.
So, it's certainly something that parents should expect to happen. Children need both of their parents, unless there's a reason for the court to award not 50-50, So I would just keep that in mind when you are navigating a custody battle or wanting to change parenting time. Keep that in mind, because that's what the court's going to begin with. That's the presumption. It's a hard thing to challenge. It can be done, but that's what the expectation should be.
Right. And so what should parents who are considering divorce right now really be doing right now to kind of protect that parenting time?
So certainly the court is going to look at what the status quo was, what happened, who was the primary parent during the marriage when the family was still intact. So just kind of document that. Keep, who took the kids to the doctor's appointments, who was there for, volunteering at school, who did bedtime routines, who did all of those things. And if that's something that a parent is trying to challenge, then, just document that. But also keep in mind the expectation that Kentucky has is going to be that 50-50. So trying to, make sure that people don't have a different reality in mind when they're going through divorce with custody, or even custody issues if you're unmarried. Those things really, you need to focus on that. What's best for the children,
right?
Not, why you hate ex-husband or why you hate ex-wife.
Right.
None of that, just what's best for the children.
And yeah, putting them in the center of it, because they're the one having to, split time between those parents, but keeping the child in the center of it is, of course, going to be the best outcome. And so, of course, spring feels like a new season for people wanting to get things in order. So what is your message for someone who's kind of been putting off this decision?
Yeah, I think that you really need to think about what you want this year to be. If you're struggling with your co-parent or your spouse and you have children involved and you need to exit that relationship, start documenting, start figuring out, a plan for your children, start figuring out a plan for yourself if that means you're walking away from an income that you're no longer going to have. Certainly get your papers together, get your notes, your thoughts down, wherever people write that, diary, your phone, whatever that is, so that you can be prepared when you're walking into an attorney's office to say, hey, look, this is what I want. Tell me what to expect and tell me what the law says. So that way your expectations can be aligned correctly.
And that's exactly where you come in and kind of be in their corner, because this is a really tough time, to deal with. Of course, if there's kids involved, if there's properties involved, all of those things. So documenting is certainly key when it comes to this. And when someone is going about that, where should they even start?
Good question. I think, it always starts with where you feel you need to be, where you need, your life to change. And certainly if you are married and if you have children involved, sometimes that means lawyers. Sometimes it doesn't if people can, figure things out for themselves and walk into an attorney's office or at the courthouse and do it themselves to process everything. But you need to figure out what you want. So that way, when you go talk to an attorney, you're not like, I don't know, I don't have any questions to ask you.
Oh, goodness.
At least you've thought about it and you are able to put your thoughts on paper and really walk in with a plan. If that means with an attorney or if that means handling the matters yourself, certainly it can be done. I don't advise that, obviously, but certainly these things just really need to be well thought out. You have to have a plan when you're, changing your life or when you're changing your children's lives. There needs to be that extra thought put into it so that your kids, for the most part, are taken care of.
Right, and get that outcome that you deserve and really want. So important to have someone in your corner just like yourself.
Yeah, and people can go to the website, type in KRS 403270. That is going to be the statute that states everything that we kind of touched on today, which is equal parenting time and joint legal custody. That's kind of what you can look at for yourself and figure out what the factors are that the court is going to look to.
All right, absolutely. Well, thank you again so much for stopping by today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so to learn more, get in touch with Tanisa and her team. Just head over to tvelezlaw.com.